It still remembers.
The air inside the clock shop was thick with the scent of oil and aged mahogany, the faintest hint of cold sea mist seeping through the cracked window panes. Eleanor Muir sat hunched at the workbench, her fingers trembling as they traced the delicate gears and cogs of the enigmatic device before her. Beside her, Thomas Gray leaned in closer, his youthful eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and cautious optimism. The soft ticking of countless clocks filled the room, creating a rhythm that seemed to pulse in time with Eleanor's own heartbeat. "Are you certain about this, Eleanor?" Thomas asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Once we start it, there's no knowing what might happen." Eleanor's dark eyes met his, resolute yet shadowed by grief. "I have to try, Thomas. If there's even a chance to undo what's been lost, I must." Her voice broke slightly, betraying the tempest of emotions roiling beneath her composed exterior. Together, they worked in near silence, Eleanor guiding Thomas's hands as they adjusted the last delicate components. The mechanism emitted a faint hum, like the breath of a slumbering beast stirring to life. Slowly, the intricate clockwork began to turn, gears meshing with a precision that was both mechanical and almost magical. Suddenly, a subtle shimmer flickered in the air above the workbench. Eleanor's gaze snapped to a small silver pocket watch resting among the tools. To her astonishment, the watch's hands moved backward, ticking in reverse with a soft, hypnotic cadence. Thomas blinked, a breath caught in his throat. "Did you see that?" Eleanor whispered, her voice trembling with awe. "It's working, it's really working." The room seemed to hold its breath as they watched the tiny hand rewind, marking a moment that defied all reason. Yet, beneath the wonder, a shadow of unease crept into Eleanor's mind. The world outside the clock shop remained unchanged, but she sensed a shift, a ripple beneath the surface of reality. Later that evening, alone in the dim glow of her chamber, Eleanor sat by the window overlooking the fog-laden town. The fading light painted the sky in muted grays and blues, mirroring the storm of emotions within her. Memories of Henry flooded her thoughts, his quiet smiles, the way his hands moved deftly over clockwork, the secret sorrow in his eyes. She clutched a faded letter found among his journals, its edges worn and fragile. The words spoke of regret and yearning, of moments lost to time's unforgiving tide. Eleanor's breath caught as she realized the depth of Henry's obsession, not merely with clocks, but with the impossible hope of turning back the clock on life itself. In the shadowed streets of the town, far from the warmth of the clock shop, Mr. Gideon Blackwell sat in his study, the flicker of candlelight casting sharp angles across his face. A messenger had just delivered news the device had been activated. Blackwell's dark eyes gleamed with cold ambition. At last, he murmured, a cruel smile curling his lips. "The power to command time is within reach." The wheels of fate had begun to turn, but Eleanor could not yet see the full cost of her actions. With every tick and tock, the fragile balance between hope and despair, past and present, tightened like the springs of a clock worn too tightly. As night deepened, Eleanor returned to the workshop, her fingers tracing the cool metal of the device. The promise it held was intoxicating, yet the warnings whispered by Agatha Finch and the cautious words of Thomas echoed in her mind. Time was not to be trifled with. Still, the ache of loss was a heavy chain, and Eleanor found herself drawn ever deeper into the mechanism's mystery. She dared to glimpse a future where sorrows could be undone, where love lost might be reclaimed. But as the first flicker of altered time danced before her eyes, a chill ran down her spine, a premonition that the path she had chosen would lead through shadows darker than the fog that blanketed the town. And somewhere in the night, unseen eyes watched and waited, ready to seize the power that could change destiny itself. The deepening fog outside the clock shop seemed to seep into Eleanor's very bones as she sat hunched over Henry's journals. the flickering candlelight casting wavering shadows across the brittle pages. Each night, the scent of aged paper and clock oil mingled in the air, a scent that had become her reluctant companion since Henry's passing. Her fingers traced the elegant yet hurried script, the meticulous diagrams of gears and levers interspersed with cryptic notes that hinted at more than mechanical invention, whispers of regret, ambition, and a hidden past. Her eyes scanned a passage that chilled her more than the cold sea air ever could. Henry had documented his rivalry with Gideon Blackwell in veiled terms, a bitter feud born not merely of professional jealousy, but of a personal betrayal that had fractured the very fabric of their lives. Blackwell, once a respected inventor in the town, had fallen from grace amid scandal, his reputation shattered, his ambitions twisted into something darker. Henry's notes spoke of stolen ideas, broken promises, and a relentless thirst for power that had driven Blackwell to the edge of obsession. Eleanor leaned back, the weight of the discovery settling heavily on her chest. This was no ordinary feud. It was the tinderbox that now threatened to engulf everything she held dear. Her gaze drifted to the intricate mechanism resting beside the journals, the unfinished device Henry had poured his soul into. If Blackwell sought it now, it was not merely out of greed, but a desperate desire to reclaim lost power, to rewrite the fate that had cast him aside. The following afternoon, the quiet presence of Thomas Gray offered a fragile comfort. The young apprentice's earnest face was marked by shadows deeper than his years, shadows Eleanor recognized all too well. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Thomas confided in her the story of his own family's estrangement, a painful rift born of misunderstandings and unspoken grief. He spoke softly, voice trembling with the raw edge of youthful shame and hope. Eleanor listened, her heart aching with sympathy and recognition. Here was another soul caught in the tangled web of loss, seeking redemption in the ticking of clocks and the turning of gears. Sometimes, Thomas admitted, it feels as though time itself has abandoned us. Eleanor nodded, the truth of his words resonating deep within her. But perhaps, she replied, there is strength in the moments we do have, in the time we still hold. Yet beyond the quiet intimacy of their shared confidences, the town stirred with unease. Reverend Samuel Harrow's voice boomed from the pulpit during evening sermons, his warning sharp and unyielding. To tamper with time, he intoned, is to invite ruin and despair. It is not our place to meddle in the divine order. The congregation murmured, eyes darting toward Elena, whose somber figure sat near the back, a silent beacon of suspicion and whispered gossip. The weight of the town's judgment pressed down, thick as the ever-present fog that clung to the cobblestones outside. In the solitude of the clock shop, Eleanor confronted the ledger that bore Blackwell's name. The faded ink seemed to pulse with menace, a stark reminder of the man's relentless pursuit of the device's power. She traced the letters with trembling fingers, a storm of emotions swirling within her: fear, anger, determination. The fragile peace Henry had maintained had been shattered, replaced by a dangerous game whose stakes were no less than the control of time itself. That night, as thunder rolled across the darkened skies and the sea's mournful cry echoed through the town, Eleanor stood by the window, gazing into the abyss of the unknown. The threads of the past, tangled and worn, were beginning to unravel, pulling her inexorably toward a future fraught with peril and revelation. Yet amidst the shadows, a quiet resolve kindled within her. She would face the darkness, confront the betrayals, and protect the legacy Henry had left behind. For in the ticking of the clocks, in the turning of the gears, lay not only the secrets of time, but the fragile hope of healing and redemption. The night deepened and the fog thickened, but Eleanor's heart beat steadily onward, each pulse a defiant promise against the coming storm. Thomas, Eleanor said softly the next morning, there is more at stake here than either of us imagined, but we must hold fast, together. He met her gaze, the earnestness in his eyes a balm to her weary soul. I'm with you, Mrs. Moore, whatever comes. Outside, the town whispered and watched, the shadows lengthening as the tide turned. The game was far from over, and the threads unraveled only to reveal the deeper weave beneath. And Elinor knew, with a certainty that chilled and steeled her, that the darkest hours were yet to come. The cold, damp air of the workshop clung to Eleanor's skin as she knelt on the creaking floorboards. The flickering candlelight casting wavering shadows over the trove of papers she had unearthed. The letters were bound together with a threadbare ribbon, their edges yellowed and brittle with age. Her breath hitched as she untied the ribbon, the faint scent of old parchment mingling with the lingering aroma of oil and wood shavings that filled the room. Her fingers trembled slightly as she unfolded the first letter. The ink had faded to a soft sepia, but the delicate cursive was still legible, each loop and swirl of the handwriting a testament to a gentler era. The letter was addressed to Henry, signed simply as Isabel. Eleanor's eyes scanned the words, which spoke of stolen moments beneath the pale moonlight, whispered promises, and a love as fragile as the ticking of a clock. My dearest Henry, the letter began, though the days grow colder, and the shadows lengthen, my heart beats only for you. I fear the darkness that encroaches upon us, but I hold fast to the hope that time will grant us reprieve. Eleanor's chest tightened, the sorrow in the words echoing the H she herself had carried since Henry's death. She read on, uncovering a series of letters that painted a portrait of a forbidden romance, one kept secret beneath the watchful eyes of the town. Isabel had been a woman of grace and mystery, her presence a light in Henry's otherwise solitary existence. But the final letter was marked by despair, hinting at impending separation and an uncertain fate. Forgive me, my love, it read, but I must disappear into the mist, lest the shadows consume us both. Remember me not with sorrow, but with the promise of a dawn yet to come. The candle flickered violently as a sudden draught swept through the room, the flame wavering before steadying once more. Eleanor folded the letter carefully, her thoughts racing. This revelation cast new light on Henry's relentless work on the mechanism. It was not mere obsession with the mechanics of time, but a desperate yearning to reclaim what fate had stolen. Later, in the quiet sanctuary of Agatha Finch's parlor, Eleanor shared the letters. The room smelled faintly of chamomile and lavender, the herbalist's shawls draped about like comforting sentinels. Agatha listened intently, her sharp eyes reflecting a deep understanding. Love such as theirs, Agatha murmured, is both a blessing and a curse. To tamper with the flow of time is to dance with shadows. It can heal, but it can also rend the fabric of reality. Thomas Gray, ever eager to contribute, examined the mechanism alongside Eleanor. His youthful enthusiasm was a balm to her heavy heart, yet even he could not disguise the solemnity that shadowed his expression. Together, they toiled amid the ticking and whirring of clocks, each gear turning a story of hope and loss. Night after night, the fog outside thickened, swallowing the town in a veil of uncertainty. Yet within Eleanor burned a new resolve. She would uncover the truth of Isabel's fate and the full power of the mechanism. The secrets of the past whispered to her from the depths of Henry's workshop, urging her onward despite the darkness gathering at the edges of her world. As the chapter drew to a close, Eleanor stood at the cliff's edge, the salt-tinged wind tugging at her morning shawl. The sea roared below, its relentless rhythm a reminder that time, like the tide, waits for no one. Clutching a faded photograph of Isabel, Eleanor's gaze hardened with quiet determination. Whatever the cost, she would face the shadows and the ticking hands of fate to seek the answers she so desperately needed. The night stretched on, the fog thick and impenetrable, but within Eleanor's heart, a fragile light flickered, one that no darkness could extinguish. And as the clock chimed mournfully in the distance, she whispered a vow to the lost woman who had unknowingly shaped the course of her own journey. I will find you, I will understand, and I will not let time slip away again. The candle's flame flickered weakly, casting long shadows across the worn wooden shelves lined with timepieces of all sizes. Eleanor Mere sat hunched over a small writing desk in the corner of the clock shop, the scent of aged wood and oil thick in the air. Her fingers trembled slightly as she unfolded the crumpled letter that had been slipped beneath the door earlier that evening. The ink was dark, the handwriting sharp and deliberate. It was a warning, thinly veiled but unmistakable. Surrender the device or face consequences that would ripple through time itself. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat, the words echoing in her mind like the ticking of a relentless clock. She looked toward the window, where the fog outside clung to the cobblestones like a shroud, swallowing the dim glow of the street lamps. The town seemed quieter than usual, but beneath the silence lay a restless undercurrent, whispers carried on the damp air, eyes watching from darkened doorways. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the back door. Thomas Gray stepped inside, his youthful face tense but resolute. "Eleanor," he said quietly, "I heard about the letter. You are not alone in this." Eleanor managed a faint smile, the weight on her chest easing just a little. "Thank you, Thomas. I don't know what I'd do without you." Together, they examined the letter again, trying to parse the threat's full meaning. It was clear that Mr. Gideon Blackwell had moved beyond mere suspicion into direct intimidation. The man who once rivaled Henry in invention had not only survived his fall from grace, but was now wielding power with ruthless intent. That night, Eleanor sought counsel from Agatha Finch, the town's herbalist, and a woman as enigmatic as the fog itself. In Agatha's cottage, the air was thick with the scent of lavender, rosemary, and other herbs hung from the low beams. The soft glow of lanterns illuminated shelves crowded with jars and worn volumes. Agatha poured steaming tea into a delicate cup, her sharp eyes meeting Eleanor's with a mixture of sympathy and warning. "This town holds many secrets," she said quietly, "and some are best left undisturbed. But you, Eleanor, have become entangled in something older and darker than even you realize." Eleanor felt a shiver run down her spine. "I can't stop now, not when I'm this close. Just be cautious," Agatha advised. "The powers that seek the mechanism will not hesitate to destroy what stands in their way." The following days saw Eleanor's resolve tested repeatedly. At the local inn, Martha Collins, ever the keen observer, whispered rumors and warnings. "People are talking," Martha confided, her voice low and urgent. "Blackwell's men have been seen lurking near the docks, and some of the town's elites are no longer so discreet in their interest." Eleanor nodded, the sense of isolation pressing in. Trust was a fragile commodity in a town where fear bred suspicion. Yet in the workshop, amid the rhythmic ticking of clocks and the smell of metal and oil, Eleanor and Thomas found a measure of solace. Thomas worked diligently, repairing a delicate gear that had faltered in the mechanism's core. "It's like the heart of the device," Eleanor mused, watching his steady hands. "If this fails, everything fails." Thomas looked up, determination bright in his eyes. "Then we'll make sure it doesn't, together." But the mounting tension was palpable. Each whispered threat, each shadow in the fog reminded Eleanor that the struggle for the mechanism was no longer just about her grief or her husband's legacy. It had become a battle for control over time itself. One evening, as she locked the shop's heavy door, Eleanor caught a glimpse of a figure lingering across the street, tall, dark, eyes gleaming with cold intent. Blackwell was watching, his presence a dark promise that the coming days would test her courage and resolve as never before. The clock ticked on, relentless and unforgiving, marking not just the passage of time but the mounting danger that threatened to engulf Eleanor and all she held dear. And yet, even as fear gnawed at her heart, a spark of hope remained, fueled by loyalty, friendship, and the unyielding strength of a woman determined to protect a secret that could change the very fabric of existence. The chapter closed with Eleanor standing at the window, the fog swirling in gritty noir lighting around the gas lamps, her breath fogging the glass as her mind raced. The question hung in the air: how long could she hold back the tide of shadows before the mechanism's power and the darkness it attracted consumed her entirely? The ticking clock echoed in the silence, each second a reminder that time, once lost, might never be regained. The clock shop was a sanctuary and a prison all at once. Eleanor sat amid the steady chorus of ticking clocks, their rhythmic beating a cruel reminder of time's relentless march forward. The room was dim, lit only by the flickering flame of a solitary candle perched on the worn wooden table. She held Henry's journal in her hands, the leather cover cracked and softened by years of use, the pages yellowed and fragile. Her fingers trembled as she traced the inked words and diagrams, each line a piece of the puzzle Henry had left behind. Her heart ached with the weight of decisions she was not ready to make, but which pressed upon her now with unforgiving urgency. The unfinished device lay disassembled beside her, delicate gears and intricate cogs spread across the workbench like the scattered fragments of her shattered life. The idea of using the mechanism to rewind time to reclaim moments lost to grief and regret was a tantalizing promise. Yet it was shadowed by a darker truth whispered by Agatha Finch. Such power could unravel the fabric of reality itself. The faint creak of the shop door startled Eleanor. Thomas stepped inside, his youthful face drawn with concern, eyes reflecting the soft light with earnestness. "I thought I might find you here," he said quietly, his voice barely above the ticking clocks. She offered a weak smile, grateful for the company yet uneasy about the conversation to come. "Thomas, there's something I want to tell you," she began, closing the journal gently. "But first, I want to understand your story." He hesitated, then nodded, drawing a worn leather satchel from his coat. "It's not easy to speak of, but I think you should know. My family, it's fractured. My father was once close to Henry, but after a tragedy we were cast out." Eleanor gestured toward the small hearth at the back of the shop. "Come, sit." By the firelight, Thomas unfolded his tale, a story of estrangement, mistakes, and a desperate hope for redemption. His voice carried the weight of youthful regret, and Alina found herself drawn into a kinship born of shared loss. "I understand more than you might think," she whispered. "But this device, it's not just machinery, it's a temptation, a dangerous one." Thomas reached out, placing a steady hand over hers. "Whatever happens, we face it together." The moment was fragile, a brief respite amid the storm gathering around them. Back at the workbench, Eleanor's fingers hovered over the device's brass controls. With a deep breath, she initiated a cautious activation. A faint hum filled the air, low and resonant, as if the mechanism itself was awakening from slumber. The clocks lining the walls seemed to shiver. Their hands jittered erratically, breaking the steady cadence that had once comforted her. A cold sweat broke across Eleanor's brow. The room felt charged, alive with a power both awe-inspiring and terrifying. "It's straining," Thomas murmured, eyes wide. We're meddling with forces beyond us." Elena nodded, the gravity of their actions sinking in. "If we push too far, we risk losing everything." Days passed in a blur of fevered research and tense deliberations. Eleanor found herself standing at the cliff's edge one evening, the fog rolling in thick from the sea, cold wind biting her cheeks. Below, the relentless waves crashed against jagged rocks, an eternal rhythm that echoed the turmoil in her heart. Could she bear to rewrite the past? To undo the pain of Henry's loss, even if it meant sacrificing the fragile reality she clung to? The choice was hers, and the clock was ticking. As the fog thickened, swallowing the fading light, Eleanor whispered into the wind, "What price must I pay for time?" The answer was hidden in the gears and shadows, waiting to be revealed. The clock shop was cloaked in shadows, the faint glow of a single oil lamp casting long, trembling shapes across the walls lined with countless timepieces, their ticking a symphony of measured seconds. Eleanor stood at the heart of the workshop, the enigmatic mechanism humming softly beneath her hands. It was a contraption unlike any she had ever seen, a labyrinth of brass gears and delicate cogs, suspended within a frame that seemed to breathe with a life of its own. Her breath came in shallow, uneven bursts, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on her chest. Tonight was the night she would awaken the mechanism, fully the machine her late husband, Henry, had poured his soul into. The device that promised to bend the relentless flow of time. Eleanor's fingers, pale and trembling, traced the final lever, her heart pounding a wild tattoo against her ribs. With a deliberate, almost reverent motion, she engaged the mechanism. The gears began to turn, slowly at first, then gaining momentum. The familiar ticking of the shop's countless clocks seemed to swell and distort, echoing like distant thunder through the fog-shrouded town. The air grew thick, charged with a strange electricity, and Elena felt a sudden vertigo, as if the very fabric of the world was loosening its grip. Visions surged unbidden into her mind, glimpses of roads not taken, moments lost to memory yet vivid as the present. She saw Henry's gentle smile from years past, their hands intertwined beneath the golden light of a fading afternoon. She saw Isabel, the lost woman whose absence haunted Henry's journals, reaching out to touch a world that had slipped away. The scenes shimmered and dissolved like mist, leaving Eleanor breathless and aching with a yearning that cut deeper than grief. A sudden noise startled her, a hurried footstep on the creaking floorboards. Thomas Gray burst into the room, eyes wide with alarm. "Eleanor, you need to see this," he gasped, voice trembling. "The town, people are confused. Memories are shifting, objects misplaced. The clocks, they re all out of sync." Eleanor's gaze snapped back to the mechanism, now spinning wildly, its delicate balance teetering on the edge of chaos. The device's power was real, but its consequences far more unpredictable than she had dared imagine. The boundary between past and present was fraying, and with it, the fragile peace of the town. Outside the window, the fog pressed close, curling like a living thing around the gas lamps and crooked rooftops. In the shadows beyond the glass, a figure watched Mir. Gideon Blackwell, his eyes sharp and cold, gleam with a ruthless hunger. The turmoil unleashed by Eleanor's actions was the perfect opportunity, the perfect storm to seize the power he craved. Back in the shop, Eleanor's thoughts swirled as wildly as the mechanism's spinning gears. What price would she pay for this glimpse beyond time? Could she control the forces she had set in motion? Or was she merely a pawn in a greater game, one where the stakes were her sanity, her memories, and the very nature of reality itself? Her fingers hovered over the controls, hesitant now. The mechanism's ticking grew louder, more insistent, as if time itself was urging her onward, or warning her to stop. Somewhere deep inside, Eleanor felt the fragile thread of hope and despair intertwine, binding her to the past and pulling her toward an uncertain future. The clock's hands swept relentlessly forward, but Elena knew that tonight, the hours themselves would not be trusted to their ordinary course. As the first tremors of altered time rippled through the town, she steeled herself. There was no turning back now. The mechanism had awakened, and with it, a new and dangerous chapter in her life had begun. Outside, the fog thickened, swallowing the gaslight and cloaking the streets in a ghostly pall. The town held its breath, caught between what was and what might be, as the restless ticking of the clock shop echoed through the night, a haunting reminder that time, once broken, might never be whole again. Eleanor glanced at Thomas, whose youthful face was etched with concern but also fierce resolve. "We must understand it," she whispered, voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Before it's too late." And somewhere in the darkness, Gideon Blackwell smiled, his plans accelerating on the tide of chaos. The dance of time had begun. And with every tick, Eleanor was drawn deeper into its mysterious and perilous rhythm.